Let's start the session. This is a Resolve 17 free webinar, and we're going to go through a couple of issues that are different and significantly more powerful than they were in earlier versions. So the first is let's open up DaVinci Resolve. The way to open up DaVinci Resolve is twofold. One would be opening up the actual application by, in this case, left double clicking on the dock where the application icon shows up. So it always opens up, and it takes a couple of seconds to open up. It analyzes and looks for all the connected elements like hard drives, external drives, control surfaces, color grading surfaces, and mixers for the Fairlight. So when it opens up, the first page will always tell you that it's opening up a brand new untitled project. The issue with untitled project is very simple. If you right click on it and you find out the project settings, the project settings reveal themselves to you, and they are identifying that it is default 1920 1080. It is default running in 24, because remember, DaVinci Resolve was primarily set up to be a grader for films, for feature films, and those are running at 24 frames. This information is the default setting. So if you bring in different footage, you will have a question, obviously. Are you going to be making the project a different flavor in terms of raster size, which is 1920 1080 at this time, and you can switch it between any of these options available all the way up to 8190 243. Anyways, with that, let's get out of it. Let's open up a brand new project. When you open up that untitled project, by definition, there is nothing in it. So you need to bring some stuff in it. On the bottom of the application, you will see these icons: media, cut, edit, fusion. It takes about 2-3 seconds to kick in fusion, then color, then Fairlight, and deliver. So the process of editing in Resolve is set up for the following left to right movement. You bring in the material, you do a fast-paced cut if you want to do sophisticating cutting and editing, then you add some animation. Then after the animation, you do the color grading, and then after the color grading, you fix the audio or adjust the audio, and then you deliver it, which means that you are sending it out for distribution. So that's basically the protocol. In the media tool, I will have a way of bringing stuff in, either by looking for where material is to be found. I have some material on a drive that is, in this case, external drive. So I have two of these external ones. One is the R17, where I have the beginner lessons. And if I go in the lesson, it shows me that I have some graphics, I have some interview material. So these interview materials that I have now in my system, ecosystem, I can look at in picture, I can look at in text view. So if I look at in picture, clearly make them bigger. So I know that this is a material. Hello, there is a slider, makes them bigger. So if these guys become part of my show, highlighting them, or Command A selecting all, throw them into your media pool. Now they are part of it, meaning they are part of your project. The first question obviously is change project frame rate. What does that mean? That means that the footage that you're trying to bring into this project is a different frame rate, probably different aspect ratio. And the question is, do you want to force the source material raster size to dictate what the project is going to be, or the project, if you remember minutes ago, we set it up for 1920 1080. If you don't change it, then it's the scenario. So now the computer is going to say, I'm going to play whatever you give me, still as 1920 1080. When this is done, the next step would be either going to cut, and you can manipulate elements and put them together, like assembling them, like putting them together. There is a product called iMovie that does it the same way, very simple way. And in the edit, it's more sophisticated. In the edit, you can go back to your media pool and grab footage. I'm going to delete the existing sequence that I just put together. Sequences in Resolve are called timelines. So if you grab a clip and you left double click on it, it goes into the source viewer. You can look at it bigger. Hello. Interface, make it a little bit bigger. And if you want to play it, clearly you can move around, hit the space bar, should play it. If you have sound, it should come in. And you can grab a number of shots, grab them and drag them into the timeline. So you put together a story. That's one drag and drop. Another option, if you select all the clips, and you right click on one of them, the drop down gives you a option of create new timeline using the selected clips. So when you do that, it creates a new timeline and it asks you what is the name of it. So the name of it would be in this case called Webinar Friday. So Webinar Friday, March 12th. There we go. Comes in and I have now a story put together. Whatever the story is, it is in my right window that is known as the program viewer. And in the program viewer, you have a couple of choices. One choice is obviously to zoom in or zoom out. Zooming in, zooming out would be command minus zooms out, command plus zooms in. And you also have a slider in the timeline that you can actually zoom in, zoom out with. So that's a simple way of putting together something. If you are ready to do some color grading, and that is what the focus of this webinar is going to be, the first thing is you find a shot that is going to be the one. Let's go into the color grading. The color grading is very simple. There is a button on the bottom. Click on the color, goes into the color, and now you have a full tool set of the color grading. Here's one warning that I need to address. You will notice that my computer in my system preferences is set up to be in display larger than 1920 1080. Notice that 1920 and 80. Mine is actually the 5K, so I have 2048. If I have a lesser raster size, like 1600 by 900, see what happens to the tools. The tools that you should see inside your color grading are not all visible. And I know it for a fact because if you want to check your workspace and you reset the user interface layout, elements are missing. That is a definite proof that you are not playing the full raster. Therefore, going back to your computer system preferences, in the computer system preferences, do make sure that the display is set up to be at least 1920 1080. In my case, it's larger than 1920 1080, slightly. Then reset the user interface in the workspace dropdown, and then you have all the tools and material that you can manipulate your color grading with. All right, so step one, how do you make adjustments to the clip? When you park on a clip, there are probably questions about how is that actually clip looking? Meaning, do you believe that the colors are accurate? Do you have the computer monitor set up accurately? So if you are not sure 100%, you generally like to right click on the program viewer and open up a scope. And the scopes by default usually open up at 4. There we go, the 4 scopes. So the 4 scopes you can pick and choose. Generally 2 scopes are sufficient. And the 2 scopes that people generally use are waveform. So let's check the first one and make it the waveform, which is the brightness and darkness amount. And look at the vector scope. So the vector scope is going to give you the placement of that color. In order for you to see things properly, my recommendation is always to bring up the vector scope, graticule, and brightness. And when you let it go, now you can see that the red is around 11 o'clock and the yellow is around 9 o'clock. So seems to be a whole bunch of brown. That is why you are in the between yellow and red. Now, the waveform shows you the amount of brightness and darkness, and you will notice that the numbers are not 16 to 255 because by definition, Resolve uses 10-bit color manipulation. So they are, by definition, always dealing with a 10-bit color. So that is why the brightest signal is 1024 and the darkest signal is 0. I need to make sure that my vector scope and waveform are up. In the waveform, I need to make sure that the waveform is a specific waveform. It is not a color, it is just a brightness. And if I use my tools to make adjustments, here are the steps that you in DaVinci Resolve should be dealing with. I am moving around, I am dragging, positioning a node. The node system is how the DaVinci does things. It's not like in all other traditional nonlinears where you have the top is top and bottom, and you look down and every effect that is on top affects everything below that. Here, the hierarchy can be organized in a different fashion. The first thing is generally, do you want to have only one node? If you do an option S, you add another node and it is only a serial node. You could also right-click inside the drop-down and then you can actually add a node, and the node choices are serial, serial before, add parallel, add layer, add outside. Those are the general possibilities. So serial node means that whatever the first one is, the second one will change it, and when the output is reached, the second one's flavor filter will make adjustments to it. So with that, let's find out what are the choices. Bottom left-hand corner, you see these 4 color wheels, which are traditionally the wheels that everybody uses for adjusting color territories, like in the vectorscope. Remember, we talked about 11 o'clock is more reddish, magenta is around 1 o'clock-ish, bluish is around 3 o'clock, greenish is around, cyan is around 5 o'clock, greenish is around 7 o'clock, and yellowish is around 9 o'clock. With that understanding now, let's you and I say hello to our new friends in the bottom left-hand corner where we are dealing with the wheels. So there's wheels, bars, and log. Let's just go back to the wheels. When the 4 wheels show up, you see a lift, a gamma, and gain, and offset. The lift is adjusting the dark areas, the gamma adjusts the gray areas, and the gain adjusts the bright areas. But here are 2 additional tools, actually 3, that I recommend you consider. First, select the node that you want to adjust. 1. 2, if you hit A automatically adjusts the brightness to the maximum available and the minimum available in brightness and darkness. So if you hit A, it does some interesting things. It pushes up the bright all the way to the maximum and brings down the dark to the minimum. Let's reset it, reset the node. So one more time, watch the waveform. The waveform tells you, you see I'm hovering around the waveform. If it is in your way, just leave the waveform on. That's it, the waveform. And here's where real estate management becomes very important. So if you understand that the maximum brightness is not reached by hitting A, it pushes up all the way to the maximum and bring down to the minimum. That is automatic. The other way of doing things is going to be using your crosshairs. The crosshairs you are looking for are in the pick the black area and pick the white area, which generally means you pick the darkest area to be. So if I pick on the crosshair and I'm going to pick the darkest element and I make that darkest element. So I picked on a object frame accuracy on a clip, and I said that that area is the darkest on that clip. And if I click on the bright white, I'll pick one of those shirts. So now I selected the brightest and darkest by me selecting what's the darkest and brightest. If I reset it, here it is. Watch what happens if I have a lighter area picked up as a darker. I pick up the yellow. Everything is now much darker because I picked a bright to be the darkest. That's the key point. That's the second. The third one is a very unique one. I kind of like that, and I usually like it very much when I have a lot of gray elements to work with. So if I agree, and you need to agree with me on that one, that this character that I am seeing here has a gray shirt, and that shirt was gray. I don't know if it is gray, but if I want to even it out, when I say it's not gray, maybe there's a blue tint on it, or a green or yellow or any other tint. If I click on the eyedropper, I want to make sure that that is evened out. So that evens out and makes that shirt gray. Generally, it should also work on a white. So if I want to have that white, and white doesn't have any kind of tint on it, if I click on it, then white shirt becomes white. Should. Let me reset everything. Let's try it and see if that white shirt is white. Even it out. And it kind of makes slight adjustments to it. And that's why I like the gray, because the gray has a place to go above and a place to go below that. But those are the 3 general automatic ways of adjusting things. Now, what happens if you want to manually adjust things? Welcome to your curves. There is a number of tools here in the middle, and the middle section, if you click on the icons that you have available, they will run you through a variety of choices. The one I'm looking for is curves. Curves is your fastest and easiest ways to make adjustments, and you're going to love it because it is very, very unique. Here are the coordinates. The coordinates is the bottom left-hand corner and all the way to the upper right-hand corner. So the brightest element is all the way on top. If I bring it down, I have no brightness. If I push the brightness, I have lots of brightness. And I'm actually going into violation because it's actually brighter than the signal that can be transmitted is. Same thing goes to the dark. If I have no dark, I wash it out. If I want to have dark in it, I darken everything. But you notice that I'm only using 2 little markers, 2 nodes, 2 junction points. the proper wording for that would be using anchors. So if I want to split the anchors and I have a low anchor, like a middle low, a middle anchor, a middle high, a high, and a high high, I can actually select sections which are to be brightened or sections that are to be darkened. So I have a much better control. Now these anchors, you can actually reset it. There we go. These anchors can be manually added at any point, and they can be moved up or down in that hierarchy of the frequency, or emphasizing a specific frequency. Generally, when people want to make adjustment and it needs to look like a film, they use the terminology, make it S-curve. So I brighten up slightly the bright area and darken up slightly the dark area. If I look at it full screen, it looks very nice. And if I play it, it looks decent. And if I do Option D, I turn it off. Option D turns it back on. So contrast, I believe, is the first step that you need to consider as part of your vocabulary. So now we understood the curves. Let's turn this curve adjustment off. We can even name it. So if you name it, and I call it curve, my curve. So that's so far all right. If I don't want to use that filter, I turn it off and I add another filter past it. And if I right click on it, add a node after, add a serial, there we go. So that's going to be using my color wheels. So how do the color wheels differ from the curves? Let me just go for a second. So the color wheels are specifying which area of the signal, the darker area, the grayer area, or the in-between area, and the brighter area. Lift is the darker area. And there is 4 different ways of going about it. The first thing is the brightness. You adjust the brightness of the dark area by using the 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry, I did the wrong one. The bright area. So the bright area is being used, and you push it up. You notice how when it pushes it up, it squashes everything in between. If I reset it, there is a reset button. If I do the same thing to the gray does the same thing. The only thing with the gray is that the gray is kind of pulling up the dark and pushing into the bright area. The bright area, on the other hand, is very unique. If you go to the gain, you notice that the bright area only stretches out. It doesn't pull up the dark. It leaves the gray and it stretches it out. So it actually has a different way of doing things, as opposed to, let me reset the wheel, as opposed to you selecting only the bright area to be manipulated and leave the dark area alone, and that is not being pulled up. So the dark area is not being pulled up with a curve. Okay, let's reset that. So if you use the bright area, it pushes up and pulls the dark area with it. And these are really tools that you need to define which is the one that you like to work with best. If you have control surfaces, those 3 balls or 4 balls, you can actually use that, and those will be much more intuitive. You can also define that in the dark area, you're going to have more red or less red. Or you can also have in the gray area that you're going to have more red, the gray area, more red or less red. And you can also define it in the bright area, you can have more red and dark. And you will notice how they interact. And that's the same thing as if you would have done. Let's turn that element also off. If you go back to the curves, in the curves, you can decide that red is going to be more present in the dark areas, or the blue is going to be less present in the bright areas. So you can play with that in the curves. And that's why I was suggesting that curves is not more intuitive, but it's much more instant. You can do something and you know exactly where you were. So you know exactly which portion, which frequency you worked on. So if you minimize 0 and 1024 on top, you know where you are in that hierarchy of frequencies. So with that being part of things, let me get out of here. And when I'm done with something, let's say that I am done with an adjustment, and I made an adjustment, and I would like to copy that adjustment to everybody else. This is where things become interesting. Anyway, so if I made an adjustment, you notice that the shots between 1 and 2 are different. The characteristics are different. So the question is, if throughout the whole interview, the lighting is the same and the conditions are the same, and the talent is the same, and the background is the same, why would you want to make adjustments to 2, 3, 4, 5, and throughout the whole interview? Can I copy and paste elements from one to the rest of them? So here's one option. If you select that 2 is not adjusted, 3 is not adjusted, and 4 is not adjusted, and I know it for a fact because you look at the number that is surrounded by this color rainbow. Shot 1 has the rainbow around it. So that signifies that I made an adjustments to that, and there's an adjustment. And if you look at the nodes, they are live and they are active. Therefore, 2, 3, and 4 will maybe copy or will copy all the characteristics. How? Couple of choices. Watch me selecting, hold down Shift, 2, 3. So 2, 3, and 4 is selected for the adjustment because the conditions are the same, meaning lighting conditions are the same, the talent is the same, everything is the same. So why don't I copy from 1 to 2, 3, and 4? Here are two choices. The first primary choice is you right-click on the element that you copy from, and you're going to say, listen, I want to have apply the grade. So it applies the grade to all, to 2, 3, and 4. And now you can see that 2, 3, and 4 has the same color information as 1. In the color dropdown, I'm going to make sure that all those shots, in this case only 2, are going to be reset. There we go. So now reset. So if 1 is brighter, and we have to accept it is, 2 is a little bit darker, 3 is a little bit darker, 3 is darker, but the conditions of 2, 3, and 4 are the same. So select 2, 3, and 4, hold down Shift. Step 1. Step 2, now instead of applying the grade, you can do a shot mesh to this clip. Watch what happens with this scenario. If you use the shot mesh to this clip, the difference is significant. How so? 1 has node 1, node 2. I can manipulate it. I can turn it on and off. But 2 does not have. 2 has the composite of those 3 nodes, as well as 3. The picture still looks the same. The picture is still adjusted, but there is only 1 node, and it's complex. It's compounded. So if you want to make sure that you have the elements, meaning each of the nodes is copied over, my recommendation, my advice to you, if I have nodes 1, 2, and 3, okay, select 2, hold down Shift, 2, 3, right click, and you can apply the grade. If you apply the grade, you'll notice that 2 now has 3 nodes, 3 has 3 nodes, and 4 has 3 nodes. That's your easiest and fastest way of copying things over. I'm going to leave out of here because I need to show you some other features that are really new in 17. So whatever I had, I'm going to do a Command Q, quit. Do I want to save it? Yes, I save it. It saves it. And I'm going to call it, let's say, webinar March 12, session 1. Okay. When it leaves now, I am back in the desktop, and now I have a major decision to make. If you start up the DaVinci Resolve, the application starts up. DaVinci, like other applications that are dealing with non-linear editing, has a very cool trick available. That, well, it's not a trick, it's a cool feature. If I have a icon that in DaVinci is called DRP. DRP stands for DaVinci Resolve Project. So if I have that icon, I don't need to go through the application and find the project. I know where the project is. If I left double click on that Resolve project that I have saved, and if the system responds and I double click on it, open it up, it kicks in the application as well as opens up the application connection to the project. So step 1, it kicks in the application, and it should open up the project as soon as the application is live. Let's see if that works. There we go. I don't want to have a copy of it. I just want to have the one that I did. And that was Resolve Webinar 17. I set it up earlier today. Open it up. Point is that you see a character that is standing in the middle of the road. Command F, full screen, play it out, and you notice that the camera is moving away from the character. You notice that the lighting conditions are very, very simple, very logical, very, setups, and the camera is kind of moving away. Nothing big deal going on. I need to separate her from the background and brighten her up. So if I don't know any better, and I, let's say, don't know any better, I say, listen, I'm going to have her, whatever I have here in this scenario, I reset, that's reset, nothing in it, okay? I will make sure that I separate her. Earlier in versions before, you had an option to have a window, which is a power window. So if you had a power window, for example, a circle, and you selected that it's her, you could have that section brightened up by just using the brightening like so. But it's only her, you see that? And when I say only her, it's actually a glow around her. So it's not her shape. So the only other option that I had in that version was I had to go into Power Window, and I had to go to the beginning. I had to use a pencil tool, which in this case is the pencil tool, and draw a shape around her, separate her from the background, okay, and see how that works. Okay, I don't know if it's gonna be really that right nice because I'm doing it very fast, but I now see her separated. And she's separated, and I can still make her brighter, and she's better. But the problem is that when I move away, that mask is stuck. So for that reason, we had the ability in that tool to have a tracker, and the tracker now is going to be not this tracker where I actually record. You see how it's tracking it? But it had the shape the same. Okay, so fine, but then the legs come in, so what do I do with that? Watch how Magic Mask does the work. Magic Mask, to me, is worth the price of the game. Here's a Magic Mask. Magic Mask says, I have an object. Who is the object? What is the object? The character. So watch me draw around her. And now I will analyze it. And when I analyze it, it should, hello, it should kick in depending on how much RAM you have and how fast it is. It's now analyzing her moving away. Now, you don't see the result yet, but when it is done with the analyzing, you will be hopefully impressed with this. Here is what is expected. She should be totally separate from the surrounding. Let me see if I'm correct. Okay, so the analyzing took now. Done. There we go. Now I'm going to rewind it. I'm going to make her a little bit brighter. Watch it. You see, only her is brightened up. And if I want to play the full screen, watch her. Now, here is where things you see some minor discrepancies, but it's really accurate if you think about it for a fast way of doing this. This to me is magical. I mean, this is what black magic is all about. Clearly, do you have some elements and you can actually work on it, but the computer understood that from the top, she becomes half a body, now becomes a full body, didn't pick up the shadow, and it's now separating her. This is absolutely mind-boggling as far as I'm concerned. When I saw this, I said, this is worth the price. Reason why I'm saying it's worth the price, because this is the studio version. This version you have to pay, I think it's $299. So if you want to make sure that the contrast, there we go, look at the contrast, and now I have a much better understanding of what I'm talking about. There we go. Without the effect, with the effect, without the effect, with the effect. Clearly, it is requiring that you have lots of rendering speed, meaning RAM and graphic RAM, but this to me is really a cool tool. So that is one new thing that I wanted to show you. That's in 17. I also have an element that I kind of like from earlier versions, and this is where you separate sections. So watch what I have here. I have a segment where I have 4 nodes, and each of these nodes are doing something. So I'm going to turn the nodes off and bypass them and show you what the original footage looks like. Because I have it set up for loop, and if I hit the play, this is what I got. Command F, full screen. So the couple is in kind of walking around, I don't know, is it winery or some kind of a field of fruits, vegetables, whatever, but they are dark, and at one point, I would like to have them brightened up, both of them, or have a sun shine, not just the guy, but the girl too. And here is how we did that in the past. I'm going to add another node. And this node, I'm going to add a right click and add a node, add a serial serial node. There we go. That's the fast one. Because this one is in the middle of things, I have a problem because I need to put it at the end. So when I put it in next time, I would right click in the gray area, add a node, a corrector, and that corrector is going to be added to the end here. So I'm going to deactivate the connection. The last one goes into the element and goes outside. So now the last one is going to be one. And this is what I'm going to name the last one. Node label, last one, last one. So watch what I am doing here. Because I would like to have adjustment. Adjustment is brightness and darkness, okay? But I would like to have maybe her more brighter. Here is how we did that just minutes ago. We said I have a section where I can actually select it and only her is going to be brighter, darker, or whatever else. Okay, so you can make her brighter, darker. The secondary tools that I have, which are these power windows, I like this one the best of them. Let me show you what I mean by that. I go to the beginning, and instead of adding a node like this circular one, I'm going to add if the sun is shining from the right side. So I'm going to grab the sun, and the sun is shining from that side, and the sun is shining from that area. And here's the sunshine. Because I would like to have it softer, I'm going to make it soft so it blends in. And I'm going to brighten that area by using my friend, the brightening. So she now gets brighter. And it is so soft that you might not even see the edge around her. Watch it without, with it. Oh, that's both of them. Okay, so let's go back again. So if I want to see only her, here's the element. Come on now. And only her brighter. Come on now. Do you see her brighter? And okay, let's go back. Without brightness, with the brightness. And still, because you need to have either a shape followed. So when you have a shape, the shape shows up. There's the shape. Okay. There's the shape. And the shape, when I move along, you see the shape doesn't move around. So I need to make it adjusted. And I can actually physically say, hey, the shape by the time I get here is going to be expanding it and add keyframe. So that's one option. And the other option altogether, I'm going to reset it altogether because I like this tool that I just introduced to you. In this case, I'm going to select her with the smart magic mask. I'm going to select her. She's selected. Let's see if I can track her. Track her. It takes time. You see that the computer is analyzing her. She being the darker one. I'll brighten her up, try to match up with the boy. And when I go in here, rewind it, go into the elements and say, brighten it up. There we go. If I add some edges to it, obviously the softness of the border is going to be important for you to deal with. But essentially, if you look at material, she is in dark, she's in bright. But the coolest thing that when we move along, she's still bright. See how she's bright? And if I go to the end, the boy is bright, the girl is not. There we go, the girl is bright too. Command F, look at it full screen. It's magical. Yes, okay, so maybe the border bothers you, but listen, it's not bad at all to start with. So if you soften it up, it blends in better. That's where the softening of the border comes in. This tool to me is really the one that is magically revolutionary as far as switch from 16 to 17 comes in. So my time is up. We covered a number of things. Namely, we covered a basic understanding how making a element. I'm going to take this everything off. Command S wants to. We applied the system. Hello, undo that. We applied the automatic balance. There we go, automatic. Command Z, undo. We also talked about the crosshairs. Pick the crosshair. Let's say the darkest element is going to be this letter strap, and the brightest element is going to be, let's say, that white patch on there. There we go. So that's the second one where you automatically set things up. And I generally like to have the curves. Unfortunately, the separation is not available because he is lit, she is not. So that's why we had to go with the segments where we separate, and we explained that the power windows are one of the tools. In this case, the power window is going to be a shape. I'm going to draw a shape around her. You generally draw a shape around in the beginning of it, and if you want to have her brightened up, the only issue you need to worry about is when she moves, will the shape adjust to it? So let me see if I can make the shape follow. Here's the shape adjustment. Watch it. Yeah, the shape kind of follows her. But I believe, and I'm very, very partial on that one, that this new tool that you had, the magic mask, is much better. So if I use the magic mask, apply the magic mask, define that she's going to be the one to be analyzed. And if I did my job right, and I have some smart refine, in-out ratio, consistency, blur radius, have a blur radius maybe a little bit increased. And now if I analyze it, she should be brighter. And that gets me into the end of the session. So I appreciate your attention on this one. Command F full screen, look at it. She is not bright, she is bright. Command F full screen, play it out, watch it and enjoy. Guys, my time is up. My name is Tibor. I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for choosing Future Media Concepts for this webinar. And I wish you the best. Spread the word. Stay with Resolve. Stay with NLE. Stay with FMC. And thank you for your attention. Good luck, guys. Take care.